Oh man, okay, so we had our first witness to the stand. That was Officer Diaz, the reporting officer to the scene of the night of the incident. I have some coverage from Lawyers for Workers and from Mr. Dennis Byron that I'm going to show you. Then I'm going to give you some more details to add on to what's going on. So check this whole situation out, then we're going to get into it.
All right, we're back with the rest of the update in Tory Lanez. So we are taking our afternoon break. There's going to be more testimony at the end of the day. But right now, let me catch you up on what's happened since lunch. The defense continued and concluded their opening statement. They confirmed that their theory of the case is going to be that Kelsey was the shooter. Tory was just trying to break up the fight. Then the prosecution went up. They put on a police officer as their first witness. This is the police officer who arrived at the scene of the shooting. He testified about how he saw gun casings, blood spatter. This was a big mistake in my opinion because the defense attorney ended up tearing this police officer's testimony to shreds. He basically got the officer to admit that they did not use the proper evidence markers to mark and identify the location of every piece of evidence. So the police cannot tell you where blood was found exactly in relation to the gun casings, where based on the trail of blood the victim would have walked around. They can't tell and paint the whole story of what happened when the person got out of the car. Why, if you can't paint that story, why, if you didn't use the evidence markers, why, if you purportedly have a very simple case, did you waste your time making your first witness a police officer whose testimony is going to get torn to shreds by the defense attorney? Big mistake in my opinion, if you ask me. From here going forward, the defense will always be able to point out that the government's investigation is completely incapable of telling the jury about the movement of the victim outside of the car. So if you're trying to inject reasonable doubt, alternative theories, you've now done a great job setting it up that the government's story has holes in it.
First witness was called. Officer Diaz was the first witness that is called. He gave testimony as to what he did when he arrived to the scene of the alleged shooting. He testified that he placed these placards in various locations on the scene where there was 4 shell casings found on the scene, a chain belonging to Kelsey, as well as a pendant belonging to Kelsey. Guys, can you hear me? Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. Let me know you guys can hear me. If you can't hear me, I'm sorry, because I'm in the lobby, so I can't really talk too loud. Very important. Under direct examination by the prosecution, Officer Diaz testified that he's been a police officer for approximately 3 years. The officer testified that he has investigated crime scenes, but under cross-examination by Tory Lanez's attorney, during that examination, the lawyer for Tory Lanez got the officer to admit that in fact there weren't placards that were used at these various points in this various evidence. And why is that important? Because when you use placards, it kind of creates a sequence of how you actually pointed out different pieces of evidence. So they actually weren't placards. They were a makeshift type card that was created, which did not create a sequence. And the attorney for Tory Lanez was able to get the officer to also admit that while he's on the stand testifying, he did not have a copy of his police report. And usually I find in these type of cases, the officer uses his police report as a reference point, which is interesting. And I don't know why the prosecution didn't know that this would be something that would be brought out by the defense. Hopefully you guys are following me. We literally have only 15 minutes of a break. I had to come downstairs. I had to come and go back upstairs. So I'm giving you guys 3 more minutes. Hopefully this will be enough. But Officer Diaz was the first witness called. Right after Officer Diaz left the stand, there were stipulations as to the type of evidence that doesn't need to be challenged because both the sides stipulate that this is in fact what occurred. And these are 911 calls. 2 911 calls were played of the calls made by the neighbors. And one interesting call, the first one was by Sean Kelly. The second one was by a neighbor who did not want to be identified. And as a matter of fact, she said, please do not send the police to my house. So I'm not going to report her address, but the call was interesting. And it's typical because people don't want, especially when you have a situation where there are guns fired, you don't want to have a police officer go to a person's house because then that person can identify who in fact called the police. So the witness wouldn't be intimidated at some point. In this case, this is not the case, but that was one of the reasons why the witness did not want the police to come to the house. Hopefully this will be something you guys can actually use. I'm Dennis Bryan reporting live in this Superior Courthouse in Los Angeles, where Tory Lanez is on trial for 3 counts. 2 are aggravated assault. One is aggravated assault. One is having an unregistered firearm, and another one was the negligence charge. It's very important to note that Tory Lanez does not have a criminal record, nor was he on probation. Very important things to point out as well.
All right, man, y'all heard that right there. Now, one thing that I want to contextualize for you guys, I want to contextualize this for you. So you heard Mr. Dennis Byron say one thing that's very important, and I wondered the prosecution gonna pick up on this too, but they already on it. Remember Detective Stogner? Detective Ryan Stogner is the first police officer that Megan told the full truth of the situation to. The guy that said Tory told Megan dance, bitch. He's the detective whose statements led to Tory being charged. Now, in his interview with Meg, she stated that the defendant apologized for doing it and offered her money and begged her to please not say anything, and made a reference to the fact that he was already on probation and he begged her not to say anything. Now, you heard Mr. Dennis Byron say Tory was not on probation. Now, Tory Lanez's previous lead attorney said this right here. That was Miss Holly. She questioned Stogner about if he had any evidence that Peterson was on probation. Peterson is Tory, if you guys didn't know, Daystar Peterson. And Stogner said he couldn't find any. So why did Megan tell Detective Stogner that Tory pleaded with her to not say anything because he was already on probation? Now I'm wondering, will this come out as far as like a verbal conversation or a actual written conversation to see if Tory actually said that? I just want to point that out to you guys to see what's going to come up with that. We're going to see how this is going to come. In other news surrounding the case, Ben Simmons replied to the allegations that he was sleeping with both Megan and Kelsey.
The defense's point is what happens in the car is this. Tory questions Kelsey. Hey, Kelsey, why are you backing up Meg for me trying to, get it on with Kylie Jenner? Meg has been snaking men from you your whole life. I hooked up with you, Kelsey, and then Meg went behind your back and hooked up with me. And, Kelsey, this is not the first time. You had been hooking up with Ben Simmons. Meg went behind your back and hooked up with Ben Simmons. You have been hooking up with the baby. Meg went behind your back and hooked up with the baby.
Accusations! These are not accusations. This is false accusation. And
even Rick Ross Rose popped in the comment section to laugh at the situation right here. So everyone in hip hop is trying to see what the hell is going on. So they were on break. They're gonna come back with some more details as the day finishes. Make sure you subscribe, smash the like button, and turn on notification bells as I give you updates as far as what's going on in this trial. It's your boy Stacy. I'm out.